Lisa, if there's one thing, just one, that you can say or would like to say to parents, what would it be?
Wow.
Hold that. We'll wait till the end to answer that. But I want to say, welcome to Michael Robert Live. We're so excited you're here. Hello, everyone. We have Lisa Tanner joining us tonight. She is an award winning author and coach. And her latest book, The Joy of Writing and Journaling, has just won two very important awards: the Independent Publisher Award and the Silver Nautilus Award. So we're really excited to have her on the Parent Show because as parents, we know how much stress factors into our daily parenting. Lisa actually uses journaling and creative writing to get rid of that stress and anxiety. So, Lisa, tell me, I know everyone out there, especially when it comes to writing
Mm-hmm.
and public speaking, always seems to feel very blocked,
Mm-hmm.
very anxious, and very fearful. Kind of like parenting.
This is true.
So, where is it that you go? And a coach, the other thing Lisa does is people call her and who want to write a book and are unable to do it. In addition to being an author herself and having written so many books, she coaches other people to help them get their message out. So we're all wondering, when you're not feeling inspired
Mm-hmm.
or you're trying to find your muse and they're on vacation, where do you go to get inspired?
Yeah, it's a great question. Nature is always a place for me that is so rich and loving and infinitely creative. So that's a big one for me. I love to practice qigong, and so that for me also is just it gets the energy flowing. Any kind of movement or breath work gets the energy flowing. So those are some tips. And I have a story that there was a time when I was feeling kind of blocked, and I was actually working on the book before this one that had to step out of the way. So this one, The Joy of Writing Journal, wanted to be published first. It was like me first. It came in, I wrote it, published it. Now I'll have to go back to the other book.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But at the time, I was really kind of stuck. And I came here to Laughing Hummingbird Farm to a full house. And you were leading us in some wonderful breathing exercises and meditations. And you asked for a volunteer.
Our first volunteer ever. It was the first time we had a guest in the format. And Lisa's brother was here from New York.
And you asked for a volunteer, and I sort of turned to my brother, and he kind of, I don't know what he did, but he sort of gave me a look and maybe a little like visual push or something. And before I knew it, I was up in the seat, and
I wasn't even finished asking for the volunteer. And I was looking this way. Lisa was over there. And out of my peripheral vision, I did see some movement. And when I looked over wondering who was going to be the first one, Lisa was already in the chair. That was incredible.
That was Alan. That was Alan's doing. He just, I don't know how he got me to do that, but it was a time I really needed some support. I think we all do. People sometimes think, "Oh, I'm a book coach, so I got it all figured out." But uh, I think the bigger the dream, the then the bigger the challenge that comes up in
Right.
some ways, right? We always have these challenges that sort of test us and teach us and help us grow. And so there's always, and what came up in our conversation was commitment. It was like, well, how committed are you? And it was really about commitment and meditation. And
And putting all those beliefs aside that stop us
yeah.
from committing to ourselves.
And, even look at the title of this, The Joy of Writing Journal, Spark Your Creativity in 8 minutes a day. So that's about a habit, right? A practice, a committed practice. So in this journal, uh, if you really choose to do, what the full invitation is 30 days, a very short journaling prompts, but 30 days makes a habit. It makes a practice. And so it really, in a way, I'm not surprised that that inspiration I got when I was here, uh, I think somehow um, informed, some of what this book became, which really is an invitation to have a regular practice just for 30 days, and then you can see. But I think a lot of people do those 30 days and then stick with it because it's so, so powerful. And it doesn't take much, right? 8 minutes a day. We all have 8 minutes.
We all have 8 minutes. It's only 30 days. So it doesn't become this huge, overwhelming commitment.
And the other thing is it's fun. So, like, it's not work. You're going to look forward to journaling. And if you've never journaled before or you're not a writer, doesn't matter. It's really easy.
What is
Um,
journaling if anyone
yeah.
doesn't know?
Yeah. So, journaling, there's lots of different kinds of journals, lots of different ways people journal. But journaling is really writing. It could be the dreams when you wake up in the morning, or the kind of about the emotions of waking up. You could be exploring a personal challenge you have. I've used journaling to when I had a health challenge and it helped me heal. I used it when I was burnt out in a nonprofit job, running a nonprofit, and it helped me leave and then start a whole new career and it gave me the idea for my first book, which was published by Health Communications. So um, it's just such a gift because you just don't know what's going to come out of your journal. But, sometimes people will dialogue with a person in their life that's giving them a challenge, but in their imagination, they'll dialogue in the journal. Or you can have a gratitude journal.
Is it a dialogue with yourself also?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I would say it's a dialogue with yourself and like the different parts of yourself, right? The wise self and the grumpy self and the depressed self or the anxious self, like all that parts of you can bring to your journal. No one's going to judge you. You're the only one reading it. And nobody has to see it. But then if you want, you may find that, oh, when I go back to this journal, there's some pieces that, gee, this would make a really amazing article to share with people, or this could make a book. It is, you never know what's going to come from the journal, but it's really for you in the beginning. And you don't have to uh, edit it, right? Or like keep anything back from yourself because you're the only one reading it.
So the power in that unedited version,
Hmm.
not only for yourself, or like you were saying, if it got published in an article, would be amazing.
It is. It is really powerful. The other thing, that I like to say to people, because there's some people who suggest, in your journal, just complain, just vomit on the page. And I think that sometimes you need to do that, but don't get stuck there.
Right.
You can explore the negative, no question, but don't get stuck in the negative.
Oh,
And
that's a really good point.
yeah. And so questions I like to ask are, is there another way to see this? Or I wonder if there were a gift in this, what it would be. So those are my tips for if you're getting stuck in that negative space.
So if anyone watching feels like they're stuck or would like to write a book or wants to make a speech or is just having a hard time moving forward, please call us or text. And Lisa and I would be happy to answer your specific questions.
Absolutely.
So, to finish the story, that was on a Saturday, and I drove over to Lisa and Tom's house, which is 15 minutes from here. And the whole way over, I'm thinking, wouldn't it be wonderful? Because part of the event that we had, one of the suggestions that we made to people was to start your day from a very abundant place, to start your day on a positive note. And how you do that, as we've mentioned before on the show, is when you get up in the morning, you disregard your hair and you just look in the mirror, eye to eye. Writing in your journal is like looking in a mirror,
It
eye to
is.
eye. Now that I'm sitting here about to say that, it's really the same kind of energy. And like you were also saying, it gives you a different perspective, which is our whole push to have. And so many guests have been on say everything is a gift,
Mm-hmm.
regardless of your judgment of it.
Mm-hmm.
There's always a perspective where if you look at it a little differently, absolutely from a non-victim place, you can see the value in it for you or the help. So I arrive at Lisa's house and Tom, her husband, was coming out and he's shaking his head. He said, "Oh my goodness, what happened over there at your house? You've put a fire under Lisa. She is ready to go. She's finished 2 projects that she's been wanting to get finished." And of course, I gave Tom the I Am Beautiful story. And I looked at him and I said, it would be great if at the next event we could actually have the mirrors. Now, I have no idea what's going to transpire. I did not know this side of Tom at all because he's in an entirely different business now. And he said, "You need mirrors?" And I'm looking at him thinking, "Oh my God, why? Do you have mirrors?" And he said, "I do." I said, "Come on, you're razzing me." And he said, "No, come with me." He took me into his basement and there were stacks of the most gorgeous mirrors. And he said, "Would these do?" And I'm like, "Oh my God, would they do?" They were perfect. The color, the design, and the amazing part was he designed them
Yeah.
and created them and manufactured them. They're absolutely beautiful and they're hanging in the room next door. So everyone had the opportunity while they were here, rather than having to go home and begin the practice. Because if you've never done it after the show, go look in the mirror and see whether it's difficult or easy to really look at yourself eye to eye. For most of us, it takes a little bit to make that contact. So don't be afraid to start your journaling either. It's the same thing. And as Lisa's saying, it's about habit. Just go do it. So anyway, I loaded the car up with the mirrors, came home, and my wife says to me, "Okay, you're going to hang them now." And what? I said, "I'm just not inspired." She said, "No, you just So within 3 hours of just having the thought, driving Wills to Lisa's house, Tom's miraculous offer, the mirrors were up on the wall, looking spectacularly beautiful. And I thought, how could you not think you could manifest anything you wanted? Who would have ever thought those mirrors were in your basement and that it could all be done? So I sent Tom a picture, and Tom says, the only thing more miraculous about you having the mirrors is that they're already up on your wall and they look so good. So journaling really can help you, just like your thoughts, to manifest what you want in life. It's really just a different translation to what we're saying.
Absolutely.
And the story that you were saying about Luke when he was a child.
So he's my youngest, and when he was in preschool, maybe if even that old, he was very young, and didn't know how to do letters or read or anything. But he was asking me about what I do, and I said, "Oh, I help people write their books." Um, and he said, "Oh, that's easy." And he left the room and came back like minutes later with these pieces of paper that had like scribble on them because he didn't know about writing. And he had gotten somebody, my husband, I think, to staple them together for him. And he came back, he said, "Mom, look how easy it is. I wrote a book." But kids, they don't have that idea of I can't, right? Kids are all about I can, and they're so quick to create. And they're not perfectionists, right? They just get it out there. They do it. They don't overthink it. And we can learn a lot from like remembering what it's like to be a kid.
So, how many times have you felt overthinking and being a perfectionist has stopped you from doing something you really want to do? Can you think of a story that you'd like to share, letting us know that? I, sorry, I'm guilty about the perfectionist
Me too.
stuff. And it took me a very long time because for Mother's Day, we got my sister unknowingly to be a guest. We didn't tell her literally until she was sitting in that chair. And Julius got up and just turned the camera on, and she was fabulous.
Oh,
But
fun.
we were talking about the funny things growing up, and that, my mom would actually use the word perfect. Unless it were perfect, it wasn't good enough.
Mm.
And, that's a belief you hold on to your whole life.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, it can be a driving force, but there's really no perfection here. You try your best, honestly, and you're the only one that has to know whether you've met what you think your best is.
It's so true. And I think, it's when we speak about parenting, it's so great that there's so many tools out there for us now, and that there's a lot to learn, but I think we can get so stuck in trying so hard to be the perfect parent, uh, that it creates a level of stress that then affects the child. And if you just relax into it a little more, get creative and have fun, that's more meaningful than trying to do things perfectly and, ask them all the right questions or do whatever you read in the book. But yeah, I've read a lot of parenting books. So I've been there. And, there's good things in parenting books, but really, the more we can have fun and be creative and spontaneous with our kids,
And
the
be
better.
ourselves.
And be ourselves. Yes.
That's my whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think the parenting books should stress more about being really comfortable in your own skin.
Mm-hmm.
Because as you were saying, it's what the child is picking up.
Yeah.
If
You're a role model.
your role model and the energy, if you're sending anxiety about being the best parent, if I had been a parent any earlier in my life than when I became a parent, oh, not good.
Uh-huh.
Too perfectionistic, too gotta do this, have to do that, need to be the best.
Mm-hmm.
And when it gets down to it, love and self-esteem, and a child can really feel that when you're there for them,
Mm-hmm.
really present, more than trying to say the right thing.
Yes.
And I think journaling would help you immensely to get to that comfort place.
There was a mom who was using the journal with their kid, right?
Yeah, I got I think it was an email or it might have been on Facebook, but I heard from a mom who said her son, and I can't remember if he was like 8 or 12, but it was somewhere in that range, and he was suffering from anxiety and had trouble sleeping.
Oh.
And she got the journal, and every night they would read one of the prompts and do it together before he went to bed. And she said he was less anxious and he was falling asleep more easily and staying asleep. Like it really impacted him. I was stunned. I'm not a mental health professional. I'm a writer, but something about it, and I'm amazed at the diversity of the ages and backgrounds of the people using the journal and the different ways they're using it. But I think it's because, journaling is this tool that everyone can use. And it really, when you journal, you're writing the book. Like I just give you some jumping off points and you're writing the book. And so you bring to it whatever challenges you have, whatever dreams you have, whatever goals you have and vision. And and that's what makes the experience. So I'm really co-creating the experience with the reader. And to some extent that happens in any book, right? A good book, you're engaging with it. But I think in a journal, the reader is really creating it. And I'm just like giving them this little spark, right? So it's been neat to see like the variety of how people are using it.
Could you just share with them the uniqueness about each chapter
Oh,
in the
sure.
book?
Sure. Yeah, this was really fun. I have a friend and colleague, Tamara Monosoff, and she loves to put QR codes in books because it does add this whole other dimension where you're connecting with the reader and the writer are connecting. So there's QR codes. So every day there is like a little something. Uh, well, there's like a video or an audio meditation or some kind of engagement before you ever do the prompt if you want. It's totally optional, but you can just scan it with your phone and suddenly you're watching this playful video that relates somehow to the prompt. And what my intention was that sometimes it's hard with the blank page, and so if you just naturally um, sort of start out with something playful and fun and it's not a blank page, you can get energy from that. And so it can really boost you up with a starting point. So that was really fun to do, and I think people are enjoying it a lot. And then I go on with a little personal note maybe about that relates to the prompt, and then I just have people write a list. Most of the prompts start with a list, so 5 or 10 things that bring you joy. And then you pick one of those and write about it. So it takes some of the pressure off of like, you have to think of this one thing to write. Well, you make this list and now you've got 10 things you could write about and just pick one. So I think it makes it easier and more fun, and you get to choose the one that inspires you. It might not be the very first thing you wrote. So it was a lot of fun to create and think about the reader and what their experience might be doing it.
So if someone draws a blank, is that okay?
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, just move on.
Yes, and actually,
tomorrow.
that happened to me. So right after the book launch, I created this 30-day journaling adventure for free for the people who bought the book. And so the whole month of October, we were journaling through the book, and I had done my own journaling through it a second time to do for the journal. And so I wrote like little bits of it on my blog. And some days I found that I didn't want to do that day's prompt. I wasn't that inspired by it. I might do the list of 10 things. And then I was like, I don't feel like doing this today. And I'd do a different one instead. And then I'd come back the next
You get
day.
a different prompt in the book.
I'd go to the next day, yeah.
Okay.
And then I wasn't doing it along the same days as everybody so that I could, put my post together for the other people on the journey. So I did a little bit ahead of them. And I thought, I'll just come back to it. And then the next day I came back and I found that my subconscious needed to work on it, and kind of, it wasn't ready to explore it yet. And then it was very fruitful to have waited. So yeah, you don't have to do it the way it says, like be yourself, as you said.
Exactly. Just And don't get discouraged if you have a blank day.
Yeah.
Go to the next one and then go back.
Yeah.
Because I think so many of us, like if we miss one, then it's over.
Somebody told me she bought the book and she did, I don't know, she did maybe a third of it or half of it. And then something came up and she stopped. And so instead of going and continuing, she said, I really wanted the full experience of the 30 days. So she went back on and got a second copy.
Perfect.
So that was fun to hear.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And by the way, don't leave without signing our copy.
Oh,
I've been
sorry.
wanting, since we bought it, I've been wanting you to sign it. And I just thought of it now. So
Okay.
if you would,
I
please.
would be thrilled.
Go ahead.
Speaking of, I'm trying to come up with a segue into this next thing, but I'm having trouble. So let's just go with this. When Luke was younger, speaking of being yourself, he wrote something interesting on a ribbon.
Oh. Yeah. So, my sister-in-law is an artist, as is my mother-in-law, and actually my mother and my sister too. So we got a lot of artists in the family. But Anne was the artist in residence at Grace Cathedral in San Francisco for a year, and she had this beautiful installation called the Ribbon Project, and there were these satin ribbons. It was several stories from the rafters down to the church, and these beautiful satin ribbons that caught the light and kind of curled down.
We've seen it at your mother-in-law's.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Gorgeous. Gorgeous.
incredible.
Incredible.
So we went to see it at the church in San Francisco, and it was just amazing. But Anne had said, people got to write little prayers on the ribbons when they let them all down, and there was a whole ceremony. She said, and you guys came all the way out here, so we're going to do one for you. And she originally was going to have us each do a ribbon. And then we got up to the rafters and discovered that there was a service that she hadn't known about. And so the church was full of singing. And this ribbon, we only did one ribbon, but it sort of curled down as people were singing and meeting in the church. And we each got to write a little prayer. And I don't remember if I asked Luke what he said or he just volunteered it, but he said he wrote that he wanted to be a legend.
Oh,
And I think
wow.
he had Elvis in mind at the
Right.
time. But, it's funny because then when he was younger, I mean, when he was very little, he would make up songs all the time and sing and fake the guitar. But when we actually did lessons, he would never practice. He did keyboard lessons for a little bit, less than a year. He did drums for maybe a year, maybe less. Never practiced.
Well, he's stuck to the drums now.
Well, that is what happened. So, he wanted to go back to the drum lessons, and he did, but he wasn't really practicing. And then a young woman at school said, "Would you like to be in my band? I'm putting a band together." And that was what he needed, And I think a lot of times we're social creatures. And as soon as he had this band and had a reason to practice and had other people he was creating music with, that was it. And so now he not only plays the drums, he wants to learn keyboard and guitar, and he also produces digital music digitally and has been creating some songs, and it's been so amazing to see. But it is interesting how these dreams and desires we have when we're very young come back, right? And they're often the seeds of a passion or even a mission that we have and a purpose that we have.
Purpose.
Yeah.
And there's a perfect example of inspiration or your muse coming from a place that you wouldn't imagine it would come from. So when people are trying to connect with their muse for the first time, let's say,
Hmm.
what do you say to them? Or if someone calls you up and they're just like, I can't get it, Lisa, the page
Yeah.
is still blank.
Well, we'll talk about their vision because I think a lot of times the book comes out of the vision they have. So, what do you want to happen in your life as a result of this book? And what do you want to happen in the lives of your readers and in the world as a result of this book. So we start there, and we do some exercises of clarifying who the reader might be. And, we'll talk about it from several angles, from this visionary angle and from the angle of what's a compelling book, what's a commercially viable book, especially if you're looking for a traditional publisher. Um, but then I say, okay, now it's time to meet your muse. And, sometimes the muse shows up as a frog or an angel or
A girl at
a,
school.
a girl at school or a jester, a mouse, like odd things that you might not like, they might not seem so sexy, right? They might not seem like, oh, wow. Um, but it's so beautiful each time that really surprising sometimes connection that people have when they do the exercise. So then I'll have them close their eyes.
Yes, that's what I'm going to
Yeah.
ask.
Yeah, they close their eyes and imagine, and I tell them, it could be auditory, it could be a felt sense. It's not always visual, but the muse will show up. And I lead them to imagine they're going through usually a path on a meadow to the woods. And then, there's a change in temperature, change in the quality of light when they hit the woods. And I just have them notice what they're noticing on this path. And they get to a clearing with some kind of building usually. And maybe there's stairs and a door, but I invite them to go up those stairs, open the door, and you know exactly where to go. Maybe your muse is in this room or another room, but you know exactly where to go. And then ask them, let me know when you've connected with your muse. And one woman was writing a book about uh, her brother in law who was lost at sea, and her muse was the ocean.
Oh.
So sometimes the muse is very specific to the book, I think, and other times it's more like this is their muse. It's grandma.
Do you have the same muse or different muses?
My muse is usually the same, but she sometimes morphs, like age-wise or how she's dressed, but sometimes my muse has been animals too, power animals, I guess, or mythical animals. So it can vary for me.
And is it a dialogue with the muse?
Yeah, it is. Usually if I'm working with somebody, I have a list of questions that they've wanted to ask, and I'll ask those questions and we see what the muse says. And sometimes I'll ask another question based on what I'm hearing the muse saying, so there's a little bit of an intuitive process there. But I always I felt like I couldn't do it for myself. Like it's helpful to have somebody holding that container and asking the questions so you can go deep because they're remembering the questions. If you go too deep, it's sort of hard to remember your questions or you're just in la la land.
Right.
So I found a coach and we were both giving presentations, workshops for the International Coach Federation. And I said, I want you to be my coach and I'm going to teach you the muse exercise. And she does it beautifully. So now I get to experience it too, which it's really lovely. Except that's probably going to be a book at some point too, I think.
That was my next question. Who takes you down that? So you found the person.
Yeah, Tammy Keeves, and she's also an author, and it's really I'm a book coach. She's more of a life coach, but she just was the perfect. I knew she could lead me there the way I lead people there.
And speaking of life, your son Will just graduated from college.
He did.
Congratulations.
Thank
But
you.
a
Congratulations.
few days ago, right?
Yeah,
And a lot of parents will feel a loss or an emptiness or a grief when their child leaves home or goes to college. Did you feel something like that?
Any journal entries on that?
there were a lot. Yeah, there were. And I can remember wandering the house room to room and just this ache in my heart and going into his room and it was like a piece of me was gone. It it really takes some grieving, I think, even though it's a beautiful thing to send your kids off and a certain phase of your life with them is over and that relationship is really different after that. So, and they're just not there day to day. Like somebody who's been there for the past 20 years or 18 is suddenly not. So yeah, it was challenging. It took some time, and each time they come home, you have to send them off again, and it's uh, it's a beautiful process, but it definitely has its challenges too.
So, what
So
perspective could we give on that?
so with your journaling, how did it help you with the grieving part?
Yeah. I mean, it helped me acknowledge the feelings. I think a lot of times we get stuck in feelings when we're resisting them, and if we just acknowledge them and go with them, uh, then there's that processing of releasing the tension that happens when we resist, and there's all those gifts that come, and I think for me a lot of times journaling is uh, an elevating process.
Space giving?
It's space giving, and it's also it can be an ecstatic process, right? There's a
Right.
very uh for me, like I when I was young, I would write poetry in my journal all the time, and it didn't matter if the poetry was good or bad. I felt elevated. I felt ecstatic at times. I can remember just writing about the sunrise like early in the morning in New Brunswick, Canada, looking out the window. It was just so spiritual and so fulfilling. And so, whenever I journal about the hard stuff, eventually you get to a place, whether it's a poem that you write or it's just processing the feelings, you get to a place where you're at peace with it, and not just at peace, but you see the gifts. So I actually had a experience in college, and I didn't really have a context for it at the time because I didn't know this happened. And it was, uh, but it was at MIT where I went to college, and I was very lucky that it didn't get as bad as it could have. But there was a party, and I think all the women were given roofies at this party, and I didn't know what a roofie was. So I had no context for it.
I don't know what a
But
roofie is.
oh, I probably anyway, it was a very we'll talk later.
A drug.
It was an experience I had no context for. And so I think, I sort of never forgot it, but it wasn't part of my regular consciousness. And I was reading a book and I suddenly realized what had happened way back in college. And and so I journaled and journaled and journaled the past few years. And I kind of knew that there's a place where you can reach this forgiveness. What I didn't know is that there's a place you can reach with gratitude for when
Wow.
somebody does something really horrible. Um, and, I think it's normal to feel the victim when something
Right.
happens to you that's so shocking and wrong.
Right.
But it was amazing to go beyond that experience of just I mean, not just forgiveness, but forgiveness to where I didn't feel like grateful for what happened. I
No,
felt
no.
grateful for the lesson that it
Right.
taught me, which was I'm not my body. And there's a part of me that's inviolate, right? And I'm so much more than that. And, no one can really hurt me at some level, right? It was a very powerful
Very
lesson.
empowering.
Yeah.
So journaling allows you to disengage, give yourself the space so that you can go beyond forgiveness to gratitude. And that for most of us is a very tough initial step in really understanding that your perception of anything that happens in your life, you can view it as a gift and be grateful for it.
Yeah.
And like you were saying, not grateful for the act, but grateful for the awareness and having you understand your divinity
Mm-hmm.
and that you're not your physical body.
Yeah, and we can read books about it and it can be intellectual that we understand that, but until we work through it, like in any kind of healing context, it could be journaling, it could be working with a healer or meditating, but until we work through that, we don't know it in our bones. And when we work through it, without necessarily, oh, I'm going to journal so that I get this, I'm going to get to gratitude. But if we just organically
Right.
explore, and, I wrote a lot of letters to this person and a lot of letters to MIT that I never sent, right? It was all an internal process. Um, and a lot of iterations, it's not like this,
No.
but it's such a powerful thing to do. And that's, I mean, therapy is very expensive. Journals are not. You can get a blank
Right.
notebook
Right.
and just go at it. So it's I think one of the greatest tools we have
And
for
Awesome.
healing.
So, if anyone has a similar experience that they just can't get past, Lisa's book and Lisa are offering a tool that maybe would help you get past it. And look at the number of iterations and back and forth that you had to go through
Hmm.
to get to that point of grateful.
Yeah.
So
And
don't give up.
yeah. Can I say one quick thing? Um, I wrote this journal to really be easy and fun and playful. So you don't have to go to those super deep places either. And I want to be clear about that because, you know, the heavy material, it might not be time for that. And so this is like a really easy way to get into journaling. And then if you do have something heavy at some point, you're ready for it. But this is like light and playful and creative. And you could take it to deep places, but it's not, this is meant to be a joyful ride.
the joy
The
of writing.
joy of writing a journal.
First of
So-
all, we'd like to say hello to Sky Sabrina from Taiwan
Wow.
and address a couple comments. In Taiwan, growing up, we had to keep a journal all through elementary school years. I vividly remembered it was profoundly satisfying as the process led me to explore inside of myself at the end of each day.
Awesome. Wow.
Thank you very much for both of your comments.
It doesn't matter what you use, and laughter, lightness, joyfulness is so healing for us.
Hmm.
And like you were saying, that's what you do first. And then you just follow the path wherever it takes you. So, Lisa, what is that one thing you want to tell everyone?
Oh, wow. We're back to that. Um, I think it is as parents, we're trying to be perfect parents, and there's no such thing as perfect. But you are the perfect parent for your child. And they chose you. And you have, both for the really smart things you taught them and for like maybe the things you taught them by doing the opposite. you know, my husband and I are workaholics and, my older son, is definitely like, I don't want to be like that. And he wants to have fun. And, you know, I think we taught him like maybe all work and no play is not, I mean, not that we're all work, but, he's like, I don't think I want to be like that. So I think it really is, you're the perfect parent for your child. And I have a little bit of a story about that. So this past, I guess it was winter, we went to a family member's house, and it was up in
Skiing.
Vermont. Yeah, and the boys were in the hot tub, and when they got out, Luke said to me, Will and I, we had the best time. We had such a great conversation. And I said, Oh, what did you talk about? He said, Well, everything. But Will and Madison actually is my Will's girlfriend too. He said everything, but Will was just saying how what great parents you and Dad are. Like you really love us and you really have our backs, and
Ah,
you would do anything for us. And I thought in
how
that
did you
moment,
feel in that moment?
it was like all these things I've been telling myself about. I should have done this way and should have done that way. It's like they got the most important message. They're loved and we're here for them. And I'm sure everybody watching it feels the same way. You love your kids and you're here for them and you're going to make mistakes. So forgive yourself now ahead of time. And it's important to remember, like, the less pressure you put on yourself, the better parent you'll be. The more fun you have, the better parent you'll be. Give
Exactly.
yourself a break.
Give yourself a break. Step back. Nothing's that serious. And always remember, your children picked you. So if you want to diffuse any argument, you can always say, look, you're the one that wanted to hear this. You picked me. I'm just the mouthpiece. See what kind of reaction your child will give you when you say that to them. Poor Wills has heard that his whole life. Lisa, congratulations on the book and on parenting. It's so great to have you here. We hope you'll come back.
Thank you. I would love to.
So, journal, journal, journal. Good night, everyone.